I'm the founder. Okay, let's start again. Welcome, everyone. I am Purvi Shah. I am the founder of Kids&Art Foundation, and I am the CEO. For a few of us I see here that are new to us, I thought I would very briefly go over Kids&Art Foundation with you. Kids&Art Foundation was started in 2008. Because my son Amey was diagnosed with cancer, and my background as a graphic designer led me to figure out, how do I keep myself and my two sons, engaged in something other than what we were going through, which was not in our control. And I thought that art was the best way that we could create stories and a life that, we could control, and we could have a narrative of our own. And that's really the ethos on which the foundation started. Our mission statement is very similar based on that. And our goal is to use the power of the arts and creativity to mitigate stress, anxiety, and trauma, which is usually induced from the diagnosis and the treatment, not only of cancer, but of all life-threatening illnesses. Before COVID, we were a hands-on, in-person nonprofit in only 2 local pediatric cancer hospitals. Because of COVID, we are now a national nonprofit organization, and our programs are in 6 hospitals across the United States. And we have 2 new programs. Since we can't do in-person hands-on work, art workshops, we've moved everything online. And because of that, we've created with about 433 children, participants, their siblings as well. And we also started another program called Art Kits, whereby we ship art supplies, instructions, video tutorials to our patients who are in the hospitals, because they don't have any other, healing through arts that is happening in the hospital because of COVID. And thanks to all the generous donations, we have sent out almost 3,050 art kits to our 6 hospital partners. So I do get asked, why do we do the speaker series? It doesn't connect with our patients, but for me, it connects very closely with our vision, which is to integrate, creative arts, healing in life and in conversations of care and quality of life. And because of that, I am always looking for speakers who are using the creative arts, in their work life, their personal life, and in many different ways, so that we can all learn from that, and we can take something from that and hopefully enhance our life, our workplaces, and ultimately, hospitals and healthcare professionals will learn to take something from this and make, their environment, a little better, or give, back in a different way. So that's having said that, we've had Janice in September, Scott in October, and today I'm very excited to introduce Chris Murchison. I have to admit that we are going to stop calling our speaker series a lunchtime series, because even though it's lunch in California, Chris is in London and it's dinner time for him. It's 8 p.m. So I think we'll stop calling it a lunchtime speaker series. But my biggest thing is, based on our vision and our mission, Chris is just the right person to lead us with this conversation of work as art, because that's really what we all should be thinking about, art as life, art as work. How do we integrate everything? And something that Chris, says in his bio, and I'm looking for that and I can't find it, but I know it so well, is like, he says that he does this because he thinks that we should all be thinking about workplace, and thinking about creativity, not only just in the workplace, but throughout our life and our ecosystem. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, that's what you live by. And I find that his personal ethos and his work is so close to our mission that I'm super excited to have him talk and take it away from here. While I stop sharing and Chris can start sharing, I just want to say thank you very much for being here, Chris, and thank you everyone who's joined us today.
It's my pleasure to be here. I was so excited to get the invitation and a little intimidated at the same time. I don't always call myself an artist, but when I think about it, I think I can own that. I think I've been a lifelong art student and have been looking at just various ways to do art and apply art. And so the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much art is just a part of my life. And so this is a wonderful opportunity to get to talk about some of the ways that art has influenced me and my work. So thank you, Purvi, and thank you, Alexandra and Kiran. I'm really, again, excited to be here and to share what I call are some of my experiments in using art in my work. And my work is as a consultant right now, but I've always kind of worked in the realm of human resources and organization development. And so I've always been thinking about ways to help organizations feel more alive and help people feel more connected to each other, feel more expressive. You know, that's a lot of what my work is about. And I have been drawn to thinking about the ways that art can support that kind of work, can support connection, support expression, etc. So what you're going to hear today are some concrete examples of how I have been attempting to do that, and with some success, I would say. I love what you said, Purvi, about the power of the arts, and I just feel the same way, that for me, art has always personally been a very powerful practice for me. It grounds me, it serves me well, it nourishes me, and I just sort of see so much potential for the power of art in the workplace. And so again, I'm excited to share some of my reflections on that with you all today. So I'm starting, I know the title of the session was Work as Art, but I want to actually begin with this kind of question about how to use art at work, and then end with what might feel more like a powerful statement of work as art. And so there's a little bit of an arc here for me that starts with the practice of using art, and I think ends with a little bit of a strong philosophy about how we might actually see the workplace as a piece of art. So with that, I would love to start with this concept that I use oftentimes to frame some of my consulting work and the way that I think about the workplace. And that's this concept called flourishing. A lot of people who do my kind of work will refer to the workplace culture as a kind of a way of thinking about the experience at work, and thinking about that experience being an opportunity to intervene and to support the workplace being a more positive or more productive place to be. While I appreciate that and certainly talk a lot about organization culture, I find myself thinking a little bit more about this idea of community at work. And so, yes, culture is pervasive. It's something that people do experience. Some of that happens intentionally, and some of culture work happens unintentionally. But what I love as a parallel to the word culture is this idea of community. So you think about bringing people together within an organization that has a vision and a mission statement and a sense of purpose. How do people create community around that sense of purpose? But also, how do people create community with each other, with the people that you're working side by side with within that organization? I just have a strong belief that paying attention to that community within your organization is just as important as paying attention to the work that you're doing out there in the world with your clients or customers. And I think while you can ignore community and still probably do good work out in the world. I think the potential to do better and more impactful work in the world happens when you also pay attention to what's happening inside of your organization and the quality of that experience inside of your organization. And so one of the things that I often think about when I think about that workplace community is this concept of flourishing. And it's a beautiful concept for me. It kind of reminds me of the concept of resilience. That's probably another way of describing this. But what I like about the idea of flourishing is for me, it kind of goes a little bit beyond the idea of resilience. And so resilience is oftentimes thought about the ability to bounce back, to come back to a place of strength after some challenge or trauma. And for me, what flourishing does is it takes it beyond kind of the bouncing back to that place of normalcy, perhaps, but it moves kind of beyond there to this place of greater strength and greater potential and opportunity, kind of this flourishing beyond that place where you might have been before. And so I love this idea of this possibility of becoming even bigger, even stronger, more powerful. The term flourishing was coined in psychology by someone named Martin Seligman a number of years ago. And he describes flourishing in this way, which is to flourish is to find fulfillment in our lives, accomplishing meaningful and worthwhile tasks and connecting with others at a deeper level, in essence, living the good life. And so when he describes flourishing in this way, I think he is sort of describing this kind of higher sense of, again, of accomplishment and meaning in one's life that sort of is a high state, kind of a state of self-actualization, a state of, again, sort of a high aspiration of well-being in one's life. And again, I find that so positive and aspirational and inspiring when you think about working within an organization to kind of build an employee experience and a community within a workplace that can achieve this kind of a state. What's also helpful to me when I think about this term and his role in psychology is that Martin Seligman is one of the founders of what we call positive psychology. And he came to that through reflecting on his own practice of psychology and realizing that a lot of it was very much based on kind of a deficit model. So oftentimes working with clients and thinking about what was wrong or what was missing or what wasn't working as a starting place to support them in the therapy or therapeutic setting. And he interestingly began to wonder about what happens when you reframe that towards the positive. So what happens when you shift the focus of therapy, for example, to thinking about what's working or what has worked in the past that might be repeatable, or what's possible, what's positive. And he had a theory that focusing on the positive, focusing on more of a sense of abundance rather than focusing on the negative, that just by its nature would move people more towards a state of flourishing than focusing on kind of the more problem solving or more kind of looking at the deficits in someone's life. And so, with that kind of a reframe came the birth of positive psychology. And so in his flourishing model, there are a number of things that he speaks about that support building one's life into a flourishing state. And three of the things that he names in his model I find particularly helpful and interesting. So the first thing he talks about is emotions. And so to really support people in flourishing, there's the idea that positive emotions, like having an experience of positive emotions, is something that's a key lever in moving someone towards a state of flourishing. And so emotions are the experience of being hope-filled, or the experience of having strength and agency, supporting people having those kinds of heartfelt positive emotions was something that, again, drives people more towards a state of flourishing than being in a state that might place one in a field of more negative emotions. The other thing that he had as a core part of his model was relationships. And so the idea that the quality of our relationships is also a key indicator of whether or not we can flourish in life. And so if you can imagine having positive relationships, having a core set of people that surround us, a network of people that surround us who are supportive of us, that feel strongly connected with us, who care about us, people for whom we matter. Like if we have that kind of social experience in our lives and those kinds of relationships in our lives, that also puts us in the field and towards the path of feeling a great sense of flourishing in our lives as well. The third thing that he named in his model that was really important was meaning. And so, if one is in a flourishing state, he hypothesized that they likely are having meaningful experiences in their life, that they have daily activities in their life and in their work that feel important to them, that align with their sense of personal values. It could even be when you move beyond the self, that people are engaged in activities that are purposeful in terms of supporting the greater good. And so meaning and purpose here for him were also things that supported someone moving towards a state of flourishing in their lives. There's a lot more one could say about those three things and about his model of flourishing. There are other elements to his model as well that he sees as levers to move people towards this state of flourishing, which include accomplishment, having a sense of accomplishment, having a sense of flow in your work, engagement. Some people have also called on kind of health, like having movement towards a sense of health and well-being can also be an indicator or support for flourishing. But these three have been kind of named by a number of researchers as sort of the core three that seem to support a movement in this direction. And so it's with that I want to kind of frame some examples of things that I've experimented with that I think support positive emotions and positive relationships and a positive sense of meaning in the work that I have done. So let me share four examples of things that I think demonstrate how art can support flourishing at work. So I encourage you, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to raise your hand and pop a question into the chat. For me, this is storytelling, and so I welcome your reflections or questions. If you're curious about a particular aspect of a story or an artifact that I'm sharing, I love to get those kinds of questions, and because I just think they help bring out some of the texture in the examples. So I want to share my first example, which is from, actually all of these examples are from the organization that I worked with last, which is called Hope Lab. And Hope Lab, actually similar to the work that Kids&Art Foundation does, initially focused on supporting young people with cancer. And so our work was very kind of tech focused, but using tech to support the health and well-being of young people with cancer. And so we had a lovely group of staff, and at the end of every year, we typically would have kind of a year-end gathering of some kind to celebrate our accomplishments or just spend some time together to appreciate each other at the end of the year. So at the end of one particular year, we decided to do something special. And there was a group of people who volunteered to coordinate this particular year-end activity. And they were inspired by a well-being program that we had begun that year, which was focused on many of the things that we described in the flourishing model. But they were particularly interested in framing this retreat around emotions. and how to support kind of positive emotions within our group. And so for the year-end retreat, the first thing that they did was they sent out a survey to all of the staff. And in the survey, they asked each employee to submit 3 to 5 words to describe each of their colleagues. And so there were 3 to 5 words that described kind of what they really appreciate about their colleagues. And so all of that data was collected. You know, each person then had anywhere between 30 to 50 words that were assigned to them. And what we ended up doing is for each employee, we crafted a word graphic based on the words of appreciation that were submitted in the survey. And so at the event, the group crafted a gallery, and the gallery wall was essentially all of these wordles that described each of our employees at the time. And the name of each employee was written on the wordle, but covered up with an index card. So you couldn't actually see which wordle belonged to which employee. And so what was really delightful about this was that when people came to the retreat, and while they were gathering some things for breakfast, they were looking at the wall and began to engage in this almost contest to see who could guess, you know, which wordle belonged to which person. So there was just a lot of delight in seeing the wordles, and then also delight in trying to guess, you know, which wordle belonged to which person. And so you can see here that, you know, this person, whoever it was apparently funny, but also a great listener. And it was just really entertaining again to watch people trying to guess, you know, which of their colleagues that might be. So at the very beginning of this retreat, there was this kind of burst of fun energy and positive energy and emotions immediately as people delighted in seeing the kinds of things that were captured for each of their colleagues. So really, really quite a lovely way to begin that retreat. But there was a second part to this, which was even more powerful. And so the results of this retreat were handed over to an artist. And the committee talked with the artist about wanting to craft an experience at the retreat that had the feeling of sitting around a campfire together. And if you can imagine a time, perhaps then you were sitting around a fireplace or sitting around a campfire of some kind, but there's this kind of magic that happens when you're sitting around a fire like that. There's something that sparks a kind of a connection and storytelling or sharing that can feel very special sometimes. And so that was kind of what this group was going for, was that kind of specialness, that kind of a precious moment. So the artist went away and thought about that. And what she created was pretty remarkable. And so she basically designed for us a campfire made out of ceramic. And so for each person, she designed a ceramic flame that was on a little stick. Inside the flame was a battery operated light. So it could actually look like the ceramic bowl was emanating light as if it was an ember in the campfire. And then she took the wordles for each person and she boiled them down into an essence statement and attached to each flame the person's name on a little tag, and on the back of it wrote this kind of essence statement for how this person's colleagues had described them. And so just imagine that in this image, there were about 25 flames. And so when it was all pulled together, it was this beautiful, rich, full looking campfire. It was quite gorgeous. What we did was we actually covered the campfire with a cloth. And so as people moved from the gallery of wordles that were on the wall, sat down around this really large boardroom table, and actually lowered the curtains so the room was a little bit dark. And then she unveiled this campfire and all the little lights were on. And people literally gasped. They were so taken aback by just the visual image of this campfire. And then the artist, whose name is Sherry, began to describe to the group how she was inspired by the idea of the campfire and the idea of this exercise, and described to us her artistic process of pulling together this piece. And then after she spoke, we had each person go around the table and just talk a little bit about, from their own perspective, how they were ending the year, like what they felt was maybe an accomplishment or a challenge that they had faced that year, or something that they were really looking forward to in the upcoming year. But just each person had a moment to just speak from the heart about something that felt important to them at the end of this year. And I think because of the gallery of the Wordles, because of the appreciations that people had received, because of the beauty of this art piece and the way that it was made and unveiled, it created this space in the room where people told really heartfelt stories about what they were feeling. And so the emotions that the committee wanted to evoke very much came forward. And each person around that room shared something that felt so beautiful and honest and real that it was completely remarkable. There were tears, there was laughter, there was silence. I get even a little emotional telling the story of this because it's such a vivid memory for me. And this event was literally like 8 years ago. So it has a sustaining power to it as well that was quite incredible. And so again, when I think about the idea of flourishing and the importance of generating positive emotions and doing that within a community of people, this kind of activity was so thoughtfully crafted that it very, very much and very clearly generated some extraordinary emotions within our group. And as a result, at the end of that retreat, people expressed a feeling of just deep gratitude and deep connection with each other that was so powerful. It was really quite amazing. So that is my first example. I'm going to pause and see if anyone has a question before I move on to example number 2. Anything more that I can share about this experience, or any questions you have about the art piece or the artist? No? Okay.
I guess people just want to know more. So keep going, keep going.
Keep going. Well, okay, example number 2. So this one focuses on, say, on relationships. And so that second piece of the flourishing model. And so this is an example of art that was created to support a group of colleagues who were leaving the organization. And so, we were a small organization. We were maybe 24 or 25 people. And so 6 people were leaving. And, that's a lot of people for an organization of that size. And so it was also a year of a lot of change for our organization. We had a new CEO, a new leader, and there was just, lots of change and reorganization. And so, some of these 6 people were leaving because their jobs were being changed and they were being laid off. A couple of these people were leaving by their own choice. But there was a lot of transition, people transition in the organization. So we wanted to really, we always honored people well, I think, when they left the organization. But this felt really significant because of the number of people and because of the kind of year that we had had. So we wanted to do something special for them. And so we pulled together some special gifts. And so I had the privilege of meeting an artist during San Francisco's Open Studios. And this woman, Linda Rainsford, is a sculptor. And I just fell in love with her artwork. And she, of the many things that she did, she used to produce these small little sculptural pieces. And they were all based on just found objects that she had collected over the years and pulled together to create these beautiful sculptural pieces that she would sell at open studios or other places. And so I had the idea that this could be a really interesting way to produce a bespoke gift for these 6 people leaving. So I partnered with her, went to her studio, talked with her about each of the 6 people who were leaving, and shared with her, like, kind of how I knew them as people, the kinds of things that they liked, what their personalities were like. And then she and I went through her studio and just began picking artifacts from her collection that seems to reflect something about them as a person. And then I left it in her hands. And so I helped her choose a few things, but said to her, I've told you as much as I probably can about each person. I want to give you license now to produce a bespoke piece for each of the 6 people. And these are the 6 pieces that she created. And so at another gathering, at the end of it, we gave these gifts to each person. Another part of this gift that I think was remarkable and made it even more special was that similarly to our exercise with the campfire, we asked our staff to submit words about each person that delighted them. And I worked with a graphic artist, a man named Seth McGinnis in San Francisco, and he crafted bespoke wrapping paper for each gift. And so each person's name was in the center, and then all of the words that people contributed to about the things that delighted them about this person were displayed in kind of this sunburst kind of a format. And then again, so there were 6 versions of this wrapping paper, which then wrapped each of the 6 gifts, which was then presented to each person at the end of this particular retreat. The gifts, when they were presented to each person, I mean, just the gift in itself with its wrapping kind of made each person really pause and really they were just kind of amazed to kind of get this, like just at the wrapping paper. And then when they opened their gifts and saw the small sculpture that had been created for them, it's just hard to describe the emotions that I could see them having in the moment, but also the emotions in the room. And I think that the gifts just really, represented how much the organization cared for each of these 6 people and how much each person was going to be missed and what we really appreciated about each of those 6 people. And so again, it was just an affirmation of the relationships that we had created with them in the organization, as well as an affirmation of how much we valued relationships within our workplace community. So it fed each of these 6 people, but I think it also fed the whole group of us about how much we cared for each other as colleagues. It's another beautiful moment for our small organization. So that is example number 2, with the idea of supporting relationships. So I have 2 more to focus on the idea of meaning. So this next example focuses on meaning by way of mission and values. And so, as I mentioned earlier, our organization in our early years focused a lot of our efforts on creating technology to support young people with cancer. And we actually developed a video game experience which allowed young people to have this sort of virtual experience of going inside a cancer patient's body and kind of going to war with the cancer. And all the while, the game was teaching them about what was happening inside of a cancer patient's body, like what the treatment was doing, how the body was responding to the treatments, what cancer actually looked like and what it was doing inside of the body. So it's both kind of an educational experience, but also a kind of a transformative experience of giving them a greater sense of power in the face of this big thing that they were managing called cancer. And so we had just moved into a new office, and we were very keen to decorate our office in a way that really reflected our mission and our purpose. And so again, we partnered with an artist. This was a person whose art I had seen in one of the downtown buildings in San Francisco. And he didn't have a piece like this, but he had some large piece of art that just caught my attention. And me being curious, I thought, I'm just gonna find out who this artist is and contact him and just see what's possible, if anything, in terms of collaborating on something for our new office. So I reached out to him, and he was very nice and very receptive to a project with us. And so we worked with him. We shared with him our mission statement and our values. We shared with him information about our video game. We gave him images of young cancer patients that we were working with, gave him images from our game. He interviewed some of our staff members to get a deeper sense of kind of what our work was like and what our video game project was like as well. And he, again, we gave him license to kind of go and create something. And he came back with this. This was, I mean, it just was remarkable. It is, like, I think there are 77 individual pieces in this installation, and it captures like actual images of young people that we worked with. It captures images, graphic images of cancer cells. It captures images from our video game. It captures words from our values and mission statement. But it just sort of beautifully brought together all of these images that reflected who we were as an organization and what we were doing and why it was important to us. And this piece took up a large part of the wall in our reception. And it was the thing that every visitor noticed right away. People on staff took great delight in sharing with visitors what this piece represented. It gave them a way to tell the story about our work, which was personal for each of them, because something in this installation spoke in different ways to different members of our staff. But it became something that the staff were very proud of and really loved talking about. So in that way, this art piece and the process in which it was created, beautifully captured the importance of our work. And it's still a piece. I mean, this was also created many years ago, and this piece still hangs in the new office, which is now in San Francisco. And again, it just lives on as something that people love, because it reflects so much of kind of who we were as an organization. Then I have another example that I would love to share about, another one about meaning, using art to support meaning at work. But this one's through the idea of vision. And during that same time period, Don, you're playing with those little special effects on your, I love those, those are fantastic. So like your frames you just had on, we did an exercise with our management team at a board meeting around frames and framing. And so this was a board retreat where, again, it was a year of a lot of change for our organization. And we came into this retreat wanting to look ahead in terms of our strategic planning. And that same year, we had a layoff, and there were a number of staff changes and reorganizations. And so in some ways, it was a painful year, given the kind of relational community that we had. But the exercise was also designed to help people kind of shift into thinking about the future in a positive way. And so I had the job of crafting a check-in exercise for the retreat to kind of help people get into the right frame mind for thinking about strategic planning. And so I found this beautiful picture, painting by James Cook of a Hawaiian longboat. And our board meeting happened to be in Hawaii. So this image seemed apropos. And then I crafted these tiny little frames with the cutout in the middle. And I invited each person at the board meeting to, first to just sort of take a moment to think about the year that we had just experienced. And so just to sort of become present with whatever they were feeling about the year up to that point. And then to think about the future. So given the experience they have had of the year, how does that inform how they're thinking about the future and what's maybe possible in the future? And then with that in mind, I asked each person to take their small frame and place it on this painting, this image of this painting. And each person had their own replica of that painting. To put a frame on that painting that for them represented something about their thoughts about the future, about our vision. And so each person did that, taped their frame to their image of the painting. And then in a go around, I had each person describe to the group the section of the painting that they chose, what drew them to that section of the painting, and what that tiny little piece of that painting said about their hopes for the future of the organization. So it was a very different way of entering into strategic planning than we normally would do. And this was a very kind of a right-brained way of kind of thinking, kind of inspiring people in a different way to think about strategy and to think about the future. And I think it worked because what it allowed people to do was to kind of give like the painting and the part of it they framed, gave them a different way of expressing what they were feeling, both about the year that we had just been through, but also a way to express what they were thinking about the future. It was as if this exercise allowed them to sit with maybe the paradox that they might be living with or experiencing, or the potentially conflicting emotions they might be having. It allowed them to kind of hold both the maybe reality that they were maybe tired or frustrated or sad, but at the same time being able to sort of hold this possibility that there was something new in the future or hopeful in the future that they could look forward to. And I think if we had just asked people to talk about this, I'm not sure we would have had the same amount of emotional expression. But I think the exercise allowed people to express themselves in a way that felt a lot more authentic and honest. And I think allowing that expression also fueled them to have a little bit more hopefulness, actually, about the future as we entered into our strategic planning later on. So it was just a really different and interesting way of engaging people in thinking about visioning. And that seemed quite successful. So those are my 4 examples about art, how I have used art at work. I realize I have many, many more examples of how I've experimented with using art in different ways at work. Again, I think it's such a powerful way and different way to engage people in thinking about their work and engaging in their work. When I think about some of the benefits that I've seen of doing my work in this way, I've seen great, again, support of emotions and of relationships and of meaning, definitely. But what I've also seen is an amazing amount of joy in the workplace as a result of some of these exercises. I've seen healing sometimes. It allows people to really heal. I've seen nourishment. I've seen people being able to settle into these kinds of experiences with a kind of a groundedness or a supportive mindfulness. So a greater sense of attention and awareness. I've seen amazing emotional expression. I've seen people be able to express things that they might be experiencing in a way, again, that they might not have been able to if I just asked them a question and they responded with words. So the arts exercises have allowed them to express themselves in different ways that were very powerful and very helpful. And so much more, as I'm sure all of you probably know. So the bonus example that I'd like to share is kind of a new thing for me, and that's collage work. And so much of my use of art in the workplace so far has been the use of visual art. So I've not necessarily had people creating art themselves, but having them respond to things that we might put in front of them, or like visual art mostly, or things that are created that they respond to. And so what's been new for me this year actually is kind of discovering kind of the next level, if you will, but having this idea of, well, what happens if you actually have people make something? And for me, the making has come in the form of collage. And I recently discovered collage earlier this year, actually when I moved to London. And I started doing it mostly on a whim, because we were in quarantine because of COVID and had 10 days of nothing else to do, essentially. And so the place we were staying in happened to have a lot of magazines handy. And so my partner and I thought it would be fun to just start playing around with collage. And so we did. And so this is actually one of the first pieces that I did. My partner gave us the challenge of creating something that he called beautiful creatures. I mean, that was just the theme of his challenge for our first collage. And so I found myself sourcing things from a variety of these weird magazines that were sitting around. But from these weird magazines, I just found these really interesting images that I pulled together and put into this collage. And it was so much fun, one. Two, I just found myself completely lost in the process of making, and felt completely grounded. It felt very much like a beautiful mindfulness experience. And the result was something I was quite pleased with and quite surprised by. And so I kept going. And so one collage kind of led to another. In most collage making, you would glue down your pieces. And I found myself deciding to not glue anything down. And so for me, there was this kind of intention in my collage making, which was more about really focusing on the process rather than being attached to the outcome. And so I found that to be really interesting. And so I would work on a piece over a number of days, and because pieces weren't glued down, I could move them or shift them or take things out, add things. It kind of gave me this freedom to edit. And then the final product, still not glued down, could be photographed. And then I could just take it apart and use the pieces for other later collages. And so there was something, I began to see that there was something really remarkable in this process of this kind of art in particular, that began to make me wonder about how collage making might also be something that I could bring into my work. I began to see that the process of making collages had so many parallels for me about work, about how one goes about work in the workplace, the whole process of imagining, of following your intuition, of pulling things together, with colliding things, with contrasting things, with there's just so many things I discovered in the process that reminded me of things you might consider when you're thinking about a work process. And so the more that I began crafting collages, and the more that I played with imagery and putting things together, the more I realized that this collage making was a powerful, powerful process. And so I began to think about how I might be able to leverage this kind of art making and also this kind of reflection on the process of making art in my work as a consultant with organizations. And so I think there's something here that could be even more powerful than what I have been doing with the visual arts, that I think could just take flourishing in a way to the next level. So just a few more pieces that I have created. You can see that I've had a lot of fun. I went from very busy collages in the beginning to ones that are actually a lot more simple and kind of making a bit of a bolder statement. I've also, I now find that when I travel or when I'm just going out and about, I see collage material everywhere, and I'm constantly grabbing things and making use of them. The image here with the bird on it was a shopping bag in Lisbon, and the tile piece next to it is a bookmark. So it's interesting. I now see kind of collage in almost everything I touch. I see potential for it becoming part of a collage. But again, I just see so much potential here for thinking about, taking this kind of art making and bringing it into work within organizations. I think that, I just think, again, thinking about the way that one approaches making collages is very akin to the ways that people can think about project work or any kind of work within an organization. And I think that collage can kind of become an interesting metaphor for kind of thinking more deeply about how you are producing work in your job roles. So this is going to be I think my next level work within organizations. And just a couple of more pieces here. So those are the ways that I have been using art at work, and some of the things that with collage at least, that I'm thinking about incorporating into that practice. But to flip that statement around art at work to work as art, I also think that there are interesting ways to think about the workplace and the workplace community as art itself. And so I think that there can be a beauty in the workplace that sometimes is overlooked. And so I think there's possibilities of thinking about our workplace potentially as a work of art, as we potentially think about our colleagues as works of art. And if we maybe think about the work that we do as an artistic process, I think that there are ways that art becomes another interesting way to think about how we do our work and how we experience our work together. And I think thinking about work in that way also elevates how we think about the meaningfulness of work in a way that I think is just really, really inspiring. And so those are my thoughts that I wanted to share with you today. I am super excited to create some space here to just be in conversation with you about flourishing, about art at work, and about this idea of the workplace being seen as art itself. I'd love to engage with any questions you might have.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. I still cannot get over flourishing. I thought that was just phenomenal how you talked about flourishing, and I've been writing copious notes, but how it relates to resilience. I think flourishing is such a positive word. Resilience just feels like you are climbing a ladder that you're never going to reach, right? To the top. So I really loved how you put it. There are some questions here. I think, Marion, do you want to share what you've written in the chat? I see a lot of really fantastic comments for you. I could read them, but isn't it nice if you hear it from people? If anybody wants to say anything, anyone?
Can I please? I did
Yes.
raise my hand, but
Oh yes,
probably,
please go ahead, Mona.
Yes.
I just want to say, Chris, the whole concept to me is exceptionally unique and very heartwarming, actually. And I would never ever have thought of using these concepts in a workplace. So I will definitely be taking this through to my workplace, is because I just think it's such a positive way. And I truly agree with what you said, Purvi, is flourish and resilience. Wow, I would never ever look at those two in a same sentence. So Chris, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mona. I think in some ways, I think the organization that I worked in where we did those activities was special in many ways, and special in that it allowed these kinds of experiments to happen. and that there was a group of people who embraced those activities and really appreciated them. And I recognize that not every workplace has that kind of foundation of connection and love, if you will, for each other that we had. And it certainly, I've left that organization 5 years ago, and I've been consulting with many, many, many other organizations. And so yes, I know firsthand that not every organization might be fertile ground for these kinds of exercises. However, I have been using them at other organizations, and I think you can be very thoughtful about the kind of activity you craft for a particular group. So kind of getting to know who they are, where they are, what their comfort might be, and stretching a little bit, using art in some interesting way. And I just pick something that I think they will embrace and be willing to do. And I've had some success with that, and so, start with something simple, and then maybe the next time try something that's a little bit bolder, and hopefully they'll be willing to take that step with you. But again, I just see so much potential in using art. Kind of, so many organizations get stuck in these very routine ways of working and thinking about work. And I'm just so interested in how to break people out of those routines and to kind of get them into a different way of thinking that I hope will really inspire them.
Yeah, I know I want to be mindful of time, but I just wanted to say that the fact that you brought in artists, to workplace, I think that's huge. That's not all companies even know to go that route. So that's great. And the fact that you're thinking about bringing people to create art while, they're thinking about problem solving, I think that's fantastic. Because whenever you give an adult anything to do, they suddenly freeze. They're like, oh, I'm not an artist, but I love how you're framing this. So I think that's really beautiful. I do want to say something that Alexandra has a short video to share, which I hope all of you will watch, because that is part of, the same conversation that we do similarly with our kids, and how we are trying to change, hospitals and the environment of hospitals and the kids who are going through treatment, and how we can use art to make that change happen, right? So I had technical difficulties earlier. I'm going to try and see if I can play this video. If I can't, I will ask Alexandra to. So Chris, if you're okay, I'm going to share my screen. And I think I can do this. Okay, so before I go to that screen, I want to just say that we have one last speaker in December, Tammy Baumick. She's going to talk about the future of childhood through digital play. She works for Roblox, and she has some phenomenal things to share about digital play and where play can go. So that's coming in December. And of course, this is Chris. This was the slide that was supposed to come earlier. So that's the technical difficulties I was talking about. And without further ado, this is our project that we worked on with our kids. Wow. Okay, never mind.
There we go.
Go for it, Alexandra. You want to share us? Okay.
Yeah, so basically we had a very special workshop that we partnered with Budsies on back in July. And Budsies is an organization that basically has its participants or whoever wants to do and partake in this. They draw whatever they want to become into a real life stuffed animal or plush toy. So we partnered with them and they were able to give us a couple of kits to give to our active in-treatment patients that we service and connect with. So this is a video of Sophia. We held a special reveal event once their creations came in. We brought all of the participants that partook in July with us on this extra workshop to kind of share and reveal these stuffed animals for the first time together. So this is the video of Sophia, and yeah, if you want to go ahead and play. Maybe.
You'll have to do it. I am having problems today.
Yeah, let me play. We might have to hit %, which would be why, but there we go.
You're right.
We can't hear it.
It's okay.
Awesome. So you can see that on our YouTube channel. It has a little cute music to play in the background if you want to go back and listen to it. But it was a super special event and we love seeing just our kids' artwork come to life and their very own unique stuffed animal. And it was just really special to be a part of all of that. I'll pass it back to Purvi.
Well, sorry that the sound didn't play. We had muted, otherwise there was a lot of excitement going on. But the special thing is the kids were all in active treatment, as Alexandra mentioned, and most of them were in the hospital getting their treatment. So the boxes reached them in the hospital and they got to open them. And that to me is work as art, right? Everyone around them got impacted by this energy that the kids had, just seeing the art. The nurses, the doctors, everyone was talking about it, right? So that's really the power of art. And Chris, thank you so much for being here and sharing, just your work and how it connects with our work as well. And thank you everyone for being here today. And that's it from us. And it's 1:04. Sorry to be late.
Thank you.
Chris,
This was great.
Chris.
It was really
Thank
good.
you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
And I know if people have questions, because we didn't have time and it's really late for Chris, please email them to us and I will share them with Chris. I know this is a conversation where you'll be thinking more about it, even as you are going about in your day. So if anything comes about, please do share and we will make sure that we hand them over to Chris. So
yeah, I'm happy to answer any follow-on questions, so please send them.
Thank you, Chris. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Chris. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hi, my name is Christine Dworkin. I'm a member of the Kids&Art team now, but there was a time that I was a parent of one of their patient artists. My daughter underwent treatment for a brain tumor when she was 11. Her brother was 7 at the time. And one of the things I liked about this program was not only did it wrap its arms around my daughter, the patient, but her brother as well. A lot of organizations tend to overlook the fact that when your sibling has cancer, it upturns your world too. And it's a lot to take when you're only 7 years old. So this was a great way for the two of them to be able to create together, bond over art, and explore a newly forged sibling partnership that they had found while she was going through treatment. And that's what you give when you give to Kids and Art. That's what you give kids. You give them a little peace, some solace, some, rest from treatment for a while, and you give it to their siblings as well. So I hope you'll consider a donation on Giving Tuesday. I know my kids would appreciate other siblings being able to have this experience as well. Thank you for listening.